on the Carport. A salute to the police vehicles of Winnipeg. From the expected to the unexpected. Calling all cars, it's time for the Carport. Well, Jack, it was one thing, of course, to get the bad guys, but once you had them in your possession back in the day, you had to put them somewhere. And, of course, the concept of a police cruiser and putting the perpetrators in the back of that is kind of a new thing. Paddy wagons have actually been around a lot longer, and that's why we're here to talk today about this beautiful 1925 REO Speedwagon.
Great. Yeah, going all the way back, the prisoners were conveyed in buggies before vehicles came along. And then Winnipeg got their first one in 1913, another paddy wagon in 1917, and then this is the third one, which is the 1925 Rio. And it served Winnipeg Police for 5 years until 1930, and then it was sold off and another one was purchased.
Now, I understand that this particular vehicle was actually found abandoned. I think it was just outside Winnipeg.
It was, from my understanding, it had been somewhere near Dugald, and it's been a farm truck. And then somebody started to restore it for the Man and Nature Museum. They were going to have a gallery of vehicles, which never did take place. And the fellow who was doing the restoring was just putting it together with plywood and whatever he thought it should look like. And then it was just put into a storage. So I knew about it many years ago, and we just kept track of it.
Well, and of course, the thing that's very unique to the paddy wagon is that this body was, of course, a purpose-built body, and it was actually built in Winnipeg.
Yes, it was.
And how many prisoners would normally be put into something like this?
Well, normally your call would be 1 or 2, but if you had say a larger fight and you had a few more, they would all get pushed in there.
Well, I guess the other thing, too, that's interesting is that it was an open vehicle, so it was still used year-round.
Yes, year-round. We think that it probably had a dome-on type of door with that, not plastic, but whatever that old stuff was.
Side curtains.
Side curtain type of thing. And in all likelihood, the passenger at least probably had one of the old buffalo coats just sort of cut apart as a robe to cover his legs when they're driving. And of course, the vehicle only went out on a call and then came back in. It didn't patrol 8 hours a day or anything. It was strictly go and come back.
As needed.
As needed.
Now, this, of course, was just used for the city of Winnipeg, so this was it ever called out for other purposes, say with the other outlying police departments before amalgamation?
Not to my knowledge. Some of the other departments also had paddy wagons. There is a picture of a St. Boniface paddy wagon from around the same era. And I know later on St. James also had a paddy wagon. But generally the suburbs put your prisoners in the back of the car because the suburbs generally had 4-door vehicles.
Right. So something like this here, because obviously REO Speedwagon didn't stick around, so when it comes to the actual restoration of it, and this has been, of course, a project very dear to your heart, tell us about the trials and tribulations of chasing down parts for something like this.
Yeah, it's very difficult because Rio is not that common. Most of the parts were there, some in very poor shape, but we had an awful lot of people within the city and different places that would help us out with maybe one small thing. The tires, were lucky enough to find that they still have a factory making them in New Zealand, Firestone, and they're 33 by 5s and of course with tubes. So we were able to get that, and one gentleman here in Winnipeg just gave us a check and said, buy the 5, so we have a spare. And different things were made by different companies.
Well, and of course, one of the most interesting things to note is that this is, of course, the split rim variety of wheel with the wooden spokes.
Yes.
Still in, of course, incredible condition. And an interesting feature I noticed on the engine itself is this here, this piece that goes over the exhaust manifold, and specifically labeling to open in summer and close in winter. So was there any form of heat that actually made its way into the cabin?
I don't think so.
So simply just for running the vehicle in the different temperatures. But when the vehicle is out, and of course you do tend to take it to events from time to time throughout the province, what are some of the reactions that you get?
Well, people really enjoy seeing it, and a lot of them, you know, they want their pictures taken with it. It was out about 3 weeks ago for the Winnipeg Police Association charity ball at the Victoria Inn. We took it right inside, and there were all kinds of people standing by it to have their pictures taken with the old vehicle.
Well, I have to ask, of course, the biggest question of all is this siren operational?
The siren is operational.
I wonder if we might have an opportunity for a demonstration.
Unfortunately, the battery's not connected.
Okay.
So.
Well, I definitely, just looking at it, I can already hear in my mind definitely what it must sound like. But again, something that we certainly hope to see out at car events and historical events throughout the province as the years go by.
Yes, we enjoy taking it out, and it's been to a number of events, as you can see by the trophies.
Well, and I have to admit, one of my favorite collections is the stamps that Canada Post brought out some years back, and there it is.
We were very honored with that because this was selected as one of the 6 service vehicles of Canada when they did that series of stamps. And the presentation of the stamps was held here in Winnipeg because we were able to take the vehicle out for the presentation. So very proud of that.
You know, Jack, I'd like to actually talk to you about something that unfortunately we don't have a picture of to show people today. But at one time, there was a very interesting vehicle that operated in the city of Winnipeg, and it was an armored car. And I'd like to use the opportunity on the Carport for you to tell us about it and see if we can maybe chase it down.
It would be nice to find it. Winnipeg Police had a 1930 Buick 4-door sedan. And it was brought in as a normal car, my understanding, and then it was armored here. It has 1-inch thick bulletproof glass windows and steel plates in the doors and in the body. And this was used by the Winnipeg detectives as their bank patrol car when the banks were opening up at 10 o'clock in the morning and when they were closing at 3. This car patrolled downtown, and the officers at that time would have the shotguns and everything in the car in case of a bank robbery. And I've tracked it that it was around until about 1950, and it was sold off to somebody in a farm. Now, hopefully, it's still sitting in a farm somewhere, but I don't know. But you never know. We didn't know the Rio was around. We didn't know the hovercraft was still around. So maybe the Buick is around.
Well, we're putting a call out on the Carport to all barns, all garages, and we want to try to find this vehicle for the Winnipeg Police Museum. So we'll keep you posted, and hopefully we'll find it. Thanks for tuning in to the Carport. And if you're watching the Carport today at a friend's house because you don't have Shaw, call 480-7429 and ask for the Carport Special. Tell them Michael Clark sent you. You know, Jack, we always think of the use of a police motorcycle in, of course, times when you or I would be thinking about riding a motorcycle. But starting off with this particular Harley-Davidson, it's important to note to a lot of people that motorcycles were actually used year-round by the Winnipeg Police Department.
Winnipeg, as well as others. I was a St. Boniface policeman to start with, and I rode 15 winters and summers on the motorcycle, too.
15.
And it was interesting. It was cold, but it was interesting. The rules were that you rode until it was 29 below, and if it got to be 30 below, they allowed you to go into a cruiser.
How nice of them.
It was.
So I'm thinking of just some of the equipment that, of course, you'd have to wear to, of course, keep yourself from freezing. What was your preference back when you were riding for St. Boniface?
Well, you were given the leather coat, like the one in the display case there, over your uniform. In my time, your cold spot was your feet because you wore the ordinary boots and rubbers. Nowadays, of course, if you had skidoo boots, you'd be okay. And a lot of guys suffered from knee problems. We were lucky in St. Boniface. Somebody thought of the idea of taking one of the buffalo coat or the winter coats with the fleece lining, cutting patches, and we put them down inside our pants with the fur to your knee and the skin out. So as the wind was hitting you, it was an insulation on your knee. And I've had no troubles personally with my knees. But you were cold. You learned to drink an awful lot of coffee and sometimes other medicinal things. You had the sidecar. Otherwise, you're going to fall over. There's no power in the sidecar. It was strictly for balance.
Right.
And your drive was your rear wheel. And if you got stuck, you actually climbed off the bike, and you would hold on with one hand and put your shoulder to it to try to push it to get going. And then you had to be very quick to make sure you got back on.
Well, and this particular one looks to me to be about a 1978?
It's a 78. It's the last one that they rode into the early 80s with the sidecars.
And of course, you know, the key thing to point out here is that this is a true police special. This is from the Winnipeg Fleet.
This was Winnipeg Police.
And of course, equipped with the proper lights and the Motorola radio still intact. So the one thing I noticed too is that, and I do remember a time when the Winnipeg Police were actually using Honda motorcycles.
They did for a short time, Hondas and Kawasaki's. Partly because St. James Police had Hondas when we amalgamated, so they did keep them for a while and also purchased more. And in 1990, they went to the Beamers, the BMWs.
So this Honda that you've got in the collection right now is one getting ready to be police-ified. It's going to have all the equipment that it needs to basically qualify as a police unit.
Yeah.
And this, to me, looks like a BMW.
It is the BMW, and they served from 1990 to 2000 when they went back to Harley-Davidson. But this is a Winnipeg bike, and we're very fortunate we got it complete. And the department has been really good with this, that when we get a vehicle or a bike now, it comes as complete as possible.
Well, and especially to have all of that equipment that really shows exactly what it is.
Yes.
And this looks to me like what's actually in use today.
This is the current bike. During the winter, they're off the road and they're stored, so we've got an arrangement where we store one of them for them. And unfortunately, for the summer, they take it back. But we'll get it again next fall.
Well, and as you say, it's a great service that the well, we can't call it department anymore, the service puts together for you to have these vehicles on display. But you know, there's one that really caught my eye when I first walked in, and it looks to me to be an old Harley-Davidson Cervicar.
It is.
Let's take a look at that.
Okay.
Well, Jack, looks to me to be about mid-60s vintage for this Harley.
1966.
And I can see the suicide shifter right there on the side of the tank.
The old suicide, yes.
Now this one, let's talk a little bit about what the Cervicar Harley-Davidson police specials were used for primarily.
They were used originally, way back, as a regular motorcycle. More stability in the winter because of the not having to put the sidecar on it. It didn't have a very high speed when you were going. It was convenient. You could carry things in the back, your radio, you carried your raincoat, and this was also used for parking offenses. In the back, there was always the long stick with a piece of chalk on the end, slight curve.
So that's how you got it on my tires.
You could go down there and do your tires without even having to get off the bike. You could just reach over and do the chalk and then move on to the next one.
So, and of course, plenty of room for the coffee that you needed because you were riding them year-round.
Yeah.
Now, this one, I understand, has an interesting story as to where it ended up and how it made its way back to the museum.
Yes, actually, this is not Winnipeg. This is a Toronto police bike. And we couldn't find Winnipeg. We were in Saskatchewan and down southern Manitoba trying to find them and couldn't. This one was purchased by a family for their son. He had been injured, crippled actually, in a motor vehicle accident, and they were going to convert it so everything was hand controls. And unfortunately, the young fellow passed away, so the bike just sat for a number of years. And we heard about it, so we were able to get it back. And it's exactly the same as Winnipeg's, so it is a true police bike.
You know what I do find interesting, of course, is this putty gray color that was used for the bikes. Was there any thoughts as to why that was done, or was it just a standard issue?
It seemed to have been the standard issue. On the other bikes, the Solos, there was a break because St. Boniface had blue, a candy apple blue, and St. James had white bikes, which was nice because when somebody got in trouble, the first thing you asked was what color was the bike so you could get out of it.
Right.
You could say if it's gray, it's not us.
Okay. But as you say, definitely not a vehicle that was used for, say, high-speed pursuit and such.
No.
But, and of course, the interesting thing to point out on the Serva cars is that they also had reverse, which was pretty much required for something of this size.
Yes, and the advantage of the reverse, the officers generally didn't like riding this. They looked at it more like a kiddie car for the kids with the other policemen on a two-wheel. So as soon as they bugged you, you would challenge them to a race. And of course, they would say yes, because they're going to pull away in a hurry. And then you would add the word reverse. And they sat there while you backed up and were right out of the way.
Wow. But this particular one has been definitely lovingly restored.
Yes.
Who are some of the people locally that helped you out with that?
Some of our own people worked on it, but finally the Harley Davidson of Winnipeg out on Niagara Road, they've had it for a couple of years, and in their spare time through David Gray, it was finished. And they've been very, very helpful to us.
Well, and it's great to see, of course, you know, Winnipeg companies such as Harley Davidson of Winnipeg getting behind a project like this and really taking it to the next level. So, Jack, thanks once again for showing it to us here. And also, most importantly, if people want to come down to the Winnipeg Police Museum, let's tell them how to get there and when they can actually attend.
The museum is located in the Winnipeg Police Training Academy at 130 Allard, 130 Allard Avenue in Assiniboia. And the museum is open from 9 to 4 every weekday, aside from holidays. And you could make arrangements for a tour, but generally it's just open to come in, stay as long as you want, enjoy what we have here.
Well, and it's got some fantastic points, of course, in regards to Winnipeg police history. And also, as always, a big hit for me is the vehicles.
The vehicles, yes.
Thanks, Jack, once again for being on the Carport.
You're very welcome.
You know, Bruce, I've got a feeling that I know this particular car back when I was about 17 and not doing very smart things on Winnipeg roadways, or at least one like it, because, of course, I do remember a time when practically every Winnipeg Police Department car was a black and white.
Yes, black and whites came into Winnipeg Police Department and some of the suburban departments prior to amalgamation in probably the early 70s. Some departments may have had them as early as 1968, but most of them went to black and whites within the 70s, early 70s.
Well, definitely the signature police look, of course, for a marked car. But I think what we would also like to tell people is exactly what some of the things mean. Now, 1760, that code number on the fender here, what does that denote to the department?
Well, 1760 was a traffic supervisor. 17 denotes the division, which was traffic division out of the public safety building, Division 17. And the 60 is the supervisor's vehicle. 60 was for all the district supervisors as well.
Now, of course, the Winnipeg Police Department at that time also went to a change very shortly after this, where cars were actually white with blue doors.
That's correct. That occurred probably 89, 90, and then they lost the blue doors and they went to all white probably about 1974, 1975, or pardon me, 1992, thereabouts.
Well, this one, of course, what we need to also get our viewers to realize is that this is not a tribute vehicle. This is a vehicle that actually served all of its history with the Winnipeg Police Department.
That's correct. It was the traffic division supervisor's car. It was the last black and white to patrol the streets of Winnipeg. It was given to us when it came out of service. I don't recall the exact date, but it would have been into the very early 90s.
Now, the other thing, too, that maybe some people have seen this car in and around Winnipeg is it actually has quite a movie career.
That's correct. We've loaned it out to, I wouldn't even want to comprehend how many there was, but several. It's been in several U.S. movies, filmed right here in Winnipeg.
Well, definitely a great piece of Winnipeg history, but I thought it would be a neat idea to actually put Unit 1760 up against a current Crown Victoria. Do you think you know where we might be able to find one?
I think we might be able to help you out on that.
Let's go see if we could do that maybe at District 3.
Sounds good to me.
Well, of course, policing has come a long way in respect to the vehicles that are being used today. And with us is Constable Jay DeGroot from District 3 Station. Thanks for being on the Carport.
You're welcome.
I see standing next to us we have a current issue police Crown Victoria, and this one certainly has quite a bit more equipment than they had back in 1987.
Yeah, I would imagine that's the case for sure.
Let's talk about the laptop technology that's being used in Winnipeg police vehicles.
Okay, we have it's a Panasonic Toughbook. It's issue in all of the general patrol cars have them. It's a touch screen computer. It gives us access to all of our different reporting systems that we have, as well as the ability to pull up individuals' photos on the computer screen itself, which is leaps and bounds ahead of what we used to be able to do, allowing us to verify people's identities while we're dealing with them.
You know, the one thing that also jumps out at me is the lights themselves, and I'm pretty sure practically every police vehicle now for Winnipeg is using the LED bars and exterior lights.
They are. There are still a few of the old style light bars in circulation, but they're rotating them out. The LED bars are far superior. They are extremely bright and allows for a lot more visibility for people to see you coming.
Now, just the nature of policing today, of course, it's very common to see a divider between the front seats. And also I noticed that this particular vehicle has the bars on the back windows.
It does, which again is standard with all the general patrol vehicles, especially new ones coming into existence. They're all equipped with the bars for obvious reasons. We've had windows kicked out, smashed out, so it protects against that.
Now, of course, these are running a little bit more power, 4.6 liter fuel-injected engines, so definitely built to, of course, police specs with police packages and programming. So definitely the one that you want to have for making the necessary emergency calls.
Yes, they're good for getting where you have to go. Obviously, winter is a little bit of a struggle being rear-wheel drive, but I prefer the rear-wheel drive over the front-wheel drive.
Well, and of course, once you're used to it and have the right tires on it, which I'm sure the police service does change them over. Also, any additional equipment that's actually on board, as say in regards to emergency situations. How stocked are you when a car like this goes out on patrol?
Well, aside from our laptop computer, we have obviously our a mobile radio inside the vehicle that allows us to communicate with the communications center as well as other cars. We have our control center for our light bar, which will have the standard red and blue flashing lights. Also gives you what's called takedown lights, which are bright lights that shine forward. They're also equipped with alley lights on either side, which again is a bright white light for dark situations going down alleys and such that will light up. And on the rear, there's the amber typical safety flashers that you can have going either left or right for direction.
You know, I think this is a perfect opportunity to let Winnipeg motorists know what they're supposed to do when a police or emergency vehicle is behind them.
The proper procedure for that is to slow down and move over to the right hand, the farthest right hand lane that you can. I've been driving for 12 years these cars now, and I've seen it all. You know, it's very confusing and it's frustrating for emergency service personnel when they're trying to get somewhere fast and people don't know what they're doing or what they should do. You get the panic breakers that slam on their brakes right in front of you, and so it's good to know that that's the proper route to take, is to slow down and move over to the right to allow them through.
In the event that a vehicle has to get out of the way and possibly essentially cause an infraction, such as going through a red light to allow the emergency vehicle to get by, is that anything they're going to have to worry about in regards to a ticket?
No, the proper thing to do in a situation like that, if you're stopped at a red light, is obviously make sure it's safe before you try to proceed out of the way. You know, take your time, don't get panicked because the police car or ambulance is behind you. Take a good look both ways, make sure there's no other traffic coming, and then when it's safe to do so, pull out of the way.
You know, I've got a thought though. I wonder which one of these cars, the current issue or the '87 Crown Victoria, is the most comfortable in the back.
Well, I don't know. I don't ride around in the back very much.
Sounds like an experiment we might have to embark upon.
We can give that a shot. You're more than welcome to squeeze in there. There's definitely not a lot of leg room, but they're not built for comfort.
But of course, for me to get into the back of that car, there's probably a reason why I'm going back. Could you help me out with that?
Pick one. What reason would you like?
Oh, you have got to be kidding. I mean, if there was ever any form of community relations program that would really speak to why you don't want to be on the wrong side of the law, I think they should just simply put cuffs on normal-sized people like myself and put them in the back of a current Crown Victoria. There is no room back here, but it certainly gives you a lot of time to contemplate why you're back here. And now let's go over to... How are we feeling about that experience? That's nuts! Well, exactly. I mean, I don't have a mark on my head or anything. Okay, now this is downright roomy. I could see myself being driven out to Brandon in an '87 Crown Vic for a court appearance. I like it. Bruce, it's really interesting to take a look at the vehicles that are being used now, as well as the equipment that you had in this 1987 Crown Victoria. So let's open the door and take a look inside.
Okay, we can do that.
Well, it looks to me as though you've got one of the early police computers that were in use. This one appears to be a Motorola unit. What kind of information could you actually call up on it?
You could check on the CPIC, the record system that was in place at the time. If you run somebody's name, you could check for warrants or wants or anything of that nature, or sometimes it would give you information as to their background, whether they're a bit of a loon here or there, or you know, if there's a problem with some of the people. So I mean, yeah, it was a very handy thing in that day. Compared to what they've got today, this is like kindergarten. But it was a good system in the day that I was in the cruiser cars.
So did a little icon come up when someone was a loon?
Well, no, it just it came up with the numbers 9906, which meant that they were mentally unstable.
I think I've been called 9906 in my life. But also looking inside too is that this unit had a radar unit. Now this would have been the type that actually sat outside the window?
That's correct. Some of them, they even used a stand inside so that they could run it inside, but usually it was on the back window, either inside or outside. It's called the Miniquip. That was the portion of the radar system that told the officer inside the car what the speed was. That's in the brown case there, just above the other item.
Well, I can see that like even current model police vehicles, this one is using the bucket seat arrangement with the rubber floor. And the other thing I've noticed too here is that on the passenger side, you've got the bracket for the shotgun.
That's correct. That particular bracket is made for a shotgun with a folding buttstock on it. They came in probably in the very early 80s as a replacement for the full wood stock.
Now the light bar itself, those of course have come a long way now. Everything's gone to LED. But these particular ones had a feature on them. I believe it's called an alley light.
That's correct. It's this item right here is the alley light. There's also lights that would light up the front of the cruiser car. In behind the revolving lights on this side and the other side, all operated by that little item underneath the radar system that has the little white buttons on it.
Which also explains why this has got radio delete.
That's correct.
But you know, I have to admit, this is an exceptional example of a classic police unit, been lovingly maintained, and I can't wait to see it in more car events and special events in and around the province. So I want to thank you again, Bruce Honey, for being on the Carport.
No problem. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Well, thanks for pulling into the Carport this week. And here's a reminder that if you're interested in what's new and exciting in the world of automobiles, then tune in every Saturday from 10:30 to 12 noon on CJOB Radio, while me and Kelly Taylor tell you the latest about the automotive world on The Road Trip. I'm Michael Clark. We'll see you next week.